welcome to the fourth part of Game Developer's Perspective. It's been a while since I've been making one of these videos, and you might have thought I'm dead, but I'm actually not. It's been a very tough few weeks for me lately, for both for work and studying and all of that. But fortunately, I have managed to get a pretty adequate score, a pretty good score on my TOEFL exam, so I don't have to be all formal and by practicing my English. So I think I might drop that, but you know, it's never bad to practice. So if you didn't know, that was the reason why I started this whole series. So anyways, I'm back making videos because I feel like I should share my undaunted opinion on this subject, even though I'm not a professional, and I will say that many times during the series that I am not a professional game designer or a game developer, though I want to be one. So, in this episode, I thought I would be covering some role-playing elements within games that you can use. Because I think this is one of the most important elements of the games. When you're making a role-playing game, what kind of elements can you and tricks can you use to make your player be who he wants to be in a game, or who he wants to play with? So, make sure that my mic is on. It's on. Perfect. I have a one dropped frame in the past 2 minutes. That's perfect. That's good enough. So, role-playing elements include characters with voices and its limitations. That's going to be my first point. When you make an RPG, especially an MMORPG, then you have to consider that your story, how you want to tell the story that you present to the players. And one of the most obvious storytelling is actually that's something that is written for you, that you have no input whatsoever on the story itself. It's a linear story. You play a game, you finish the objective that the game throws at you, and eventually you get from point A to point B. Now that's pretty easy, and but it's not very RPG friendly. It tells a story, but you have no input whatsoever on how you want the story to turn out, or you actually don't have much freedom of exploring the game as much as you want. And one of the mechanics or one of the tricks that you can apply when designing a game is is well, actually not one of the tricks, but one of the decisions that you have to make is what kind of freedom do you want to give to the player. uh, right now I'm playing Guild Wars 2 again. I thought I would be playing Elder Scrolls Online or Final Fantasy 14. Unfortunately, I was extremely stupid, and I kind of forgot my password for my Square Enix account. So I had a small bit of issue of signing in. I didn't want to bother. I just wanted to start this episode already. And for Elder Scrolls, I have 60 gigabytes of updates downloading right now, which I might actually just go ahead and stop to so it doesn't compromise my streaming potential for my for my videos. So again, I'm really playing Guild Wars 2, even though I didn't really plan it out this way. So sorry about that. So anyways, I'm playing Guild Wars 2 now, and uh, it's not it's kind of related to the topics and of what I want to talk about today, but not as much as I could have shown in the other games as well. So I digress. So let's go ahead and talk about this first decision that you can make when you're designing a game is whether to give your character a voice or not. Um, in most MMORPGs or MMOs, actually, you wouldn't find your character having its own uh, well lines acted out for them. Sorry. Um the reason for this is when you when you add a voice to your character, it potentially kills the it potentially gets rid of your or eliminates your intentions with that character. So let me just elaborate on this point what I mean. Let's talk about Skyrim, for example. Unfortunately, I do not have Skyrim for the PC. I could have shown it as well, but for Skyrim and you know, maybe Fallout 3, you would have and you know, Oblivion and all the Bethesda made RPGs. You wouldn't have a voice to your character, and you would have basically NPCs that you can talk with, and they do have their voice lines recorded and put in the game. And it's actually an extremely massive, you know, element that you record all those voices and lines and whatever. So I'm pretty sure they could have done it with your player character as well for your responses, but they did not, and that was a design choice, that they wouldn't include your responses for the player. And the reason is that it would limit your fantasy of your intentions with the character, whether your character would be, you know, would have good intentions or would have bad intentions. Whenever you gave a response, you would of course click one of the options that presented to you, but the reasons behind them, you know, could be lost if the voice of your character would be recorded in an extremely you know, kind or extremely angsty or you know, nihilistic way. So to get rid of this limitation, you could, well, you have to just entirely get rid of the idea of giving voice to your character for the players, and you just have to trust the player that they create a character they want to play with, and they give their own, they imagine how their character would say those responses, whatever choice you have to make in the game. And Guild Wars 2 kind of started out similarly to this. Well, actually, let me step back a few years back. So we have well, obviously World of Warcraft and such games, and Warcraft games back in the 2000s. And in 2006, I believe, Oblivion came out, and it was a huge, well, it was a great game, and you wouldn't have, other than your appearance and some of the grunts from taking damage of your character, you wouldn't have any other voices for your character. You wouldn't definitely not have any responses recorded, because you know that would just take out this entire RPG element of the game. You know, the point is that you want to play a character that you imagine, that you created. You don't want to play a character that you know that you created, but it doesn't sound what you imagined, doesn't feel right. The intentions are ruined completely by, I don't know, the voice actor that you may not like. And for this reason, you know, voice acting for your player character was completely taken out, or well, wasn't even added in the first place, to be precise. And we can, you know, stepping a few years ahead, we would have Skyrim, which came out in 2011, and in that game, it was, you know, simultaneously developed with Fallout 4 by the same company using the same engine. And the two games are different in one aspect. Now this aspect is that in Fallout 4 you would have your responses recorded and added inside the game for your own character. So whenever you chose to respond to an NPC, it doesn't matter what you chose, you would actually get a small, you know, kind of in-game cinematic of your character responding with his predetermined voice to the NPC. In Skyrim, it was developed by Bethesda again, didn't have that. They didn't incorporate any of the they didn't even think about adding a voice to your character that you play with, and this is the exact reason why. Well, Skyrim is a highly MMO. I mean, it's a highly RPG-esque game that uh, you could really create your own character and indulge yourself in the fantasy that you wanted to build, right? You could, besides joining all sorts of different fractions and deciding the fates of these fractions that you join, for example, the Dark Brotherhood, or deciding which side, whether the Stormcloaks or the Imperials you help with during the civil war of that happens during the Skyrim, during the game. That would have it's entirely in your hands, and if you would add a voice actor to your character, then some of the intentions would be potentially lost that you have imagined, and that does ruin game player or user experience. And due to this, you wouldn't add the voice to your character. Now, on the other hand, Fallout 4, which is developed simultaneously, and I think it came out about maybe in the same year, maybe a year after. Well, I'm not sure about this. I should have looked it up, but I'm not very sure. But I think they came out relatively close to one another. They did add the voices for your character, and the reason for that is, Fallout 4 is not very RPG-ic. It is, of course, an RPG because it does let you choose your own play style and maybe indulge yourself in some quest that you choose, and you can make your own decisions. But the world itself is not really shaped by you. It has a predefined set of events that you are just exposed to completely and have no power over changing. In Fallout 4, the nuclear war, nuclear Armageddon, um, went through the entire world, and you find yourself in a world where this thing you have to deal with. Now in Skyrim, it's different because you do have a lot of potential of altering basically every single city within the game, and so that you have a lot more power in your hands as a character than in Fallout 4. In Fallout 4, again, you would have one story that you have one goal to actually accomplish. Now, in this aspect, of course, now I realize it's very similar to Guild Wars. Sorry, not Guild Wars 2, but the Skyrim, because there you have a goal of what you should accomplish. In the same manner as in as in Fallout 4. But in Fallout 4, you do have a lot less choices in your hands, and for this reason, it's not very well. You can you can add a completely generic male player or female player and you can attach a voice to this character. It wouldn't really matter because the game doesn't really focus on the RPG elements and the fantasy elements, because there is not much fantasy to go about in this world. Unlike in Skyrim, where you do have your own, where you can really shape the world as you in your head, of course. Now, I'm not saying that it would be canon, but it would be a lot more canon than in Fallout 4. I hope my message gets across, because now I feel like I'm not defining or not saying the exact thing that I'm thinking about, which is kind of lame. But again, I hope this gets across. Now, what are the things that you can counter this with? So I presented you, the choice of, playing a character that has no voice whatsoever, and playing a character that has pre-recorded voice lines. Now, just as a side note, I'm not talking about games like Half-Life 2 or Half-Life 1, where your character doesn't have a voice because the limitations of the game engines back in that era. So you wouldn't have the potential of recording billions of lines for your character, because that would greatly compromise the playability 20 years ago. Now, I'm talking about games that were precisely designed either way to give your character a voice or completely omit the voice for your players, and and the intentions were very closely related to RPG elements, not technical elements. So, in the past couple of years, there's basically no limitation of what your game can, handle. It's just your computer. And that's very a graphical term at the same time. So not very much related to recorded voice lines. Now, anyways, back to my topic. What are the things that you can, counter with? Because it's either you have everything or you have nothing, but you do have several choices in between. And Guild Wars 2 kind of relates to this in a sense that it kind of evolved, switched between the two, and introduced well, you started playing a game where your character would have a voice, but you would only hear it during important cinematics throughout the story. Um, well, skill guards, no, sorry, I'm not a skilled guard. I'm actually a terrible warlock. So, anyways, um, you would have these small cinematics within the story where your character would have its voice and you would hear it. But for most of the game, you wouldn't hear anything that your character does or says, because you would have dialogue options. If I were to go back to the NPCs up here, and if I were to talk to them, you wouldn't hear them saying anything to me. You would just see these. Let me actually show you what I mean. So if I talk to this NPC, see, he's saying something generic, but definitely not that is related to what he's saying right here. But whenever I give a response, I don't say anything. I can just read whatever I want to say, and then I imagine in my head that, oh, my character is kind of curious what this guy is telling. Um, but if my character were to say something right then, it wouldn't. It maybe wouldn't reflect the intentions of this character. For example, I want to repair my armor because it's broken, and when I ask this NPC to fix it up, I would actually kind of would want to say it in my head. Oh, great, fix me up. Oh, great, thank you, fix me up finally. It didn't eliminate my imagination from the game, and that's this is how this is how Guild Wars 2 started out, with hearing your player's voice once in a while, but for most of the game you wouldn't hear your character speaking. Now, when they after season 1, when season 2 was introduced, and and you would proceed to go to the first expansion of the game, Heart of Thorns. Now then, you would hear your character say a lot more things, and the reason for this is, well, it has to do something with the pacing of your the story and the decisions you can make throughout the story. You see, in the core game of Guild Wars 2, you would have definitely a lot of choices. Well, not a lot of choices, but you have definitely significant choices of what you can do. Um, you have basically three factions that you can, tag along with and decide who you want to be with in the end after you have tried all three, or maybe all two. I think you are kind of forced to try all three, but I'm not sure. I only played this game like only 3 billion hours and only with 8 characters, so I'm really not sure if you can if you can if you are forced to choose all three, or you can make your decisions. But I'm definitely sure that you have to choose at least two factions. You have to try out and then decide which one you want to accompany with later on. And And then you would have, even then, when you have joined the faction, then you could make choices whether you would do a reconnaissance mission or a rescue mission, or just straight go ahead and plumb everything that comes in your way. Um, and these decisions are it would have been kind of hard to make if, well, your character would have a lot of lines, right? And I'm not saying that it would have been impossible, but your intentions would have been lost with those with those recorded voice lines, and um, and for this reason they didn't add the voice. Now, when you have reached the first expansion, by the time, then you would have the story itself would become a lot more linear. You wouldn't have, the choices to make. Um, there are a few minor choices you can make, whether to accompany person A or person B, but not in the story itself. You wouldn't be able to change the story itself, and due to this, they decided that, okay, we are going to add a voice to your character, and it's gonna speak a lot more. Now, in my opinion, I feel kind of bittersweet about this, because it kind of got rid of my imagination of what my character should sound like, because I've been hearing it so much. I cannot, my fantasy kind of adjusted itself to the pre-recorded voices of these characters, um, rather than the other way around. I think it should be my imagination, dictating how my character should sound like. For example, my favorite Azura character. Um, but but on the other hand, uh, reading a lot, because you wouldn't have any other means of well, you wow, someone just kind of said that Fallout 4 came out in November 15. I was way off. I was way off with that. Sorry about that. Well, kind of that really actually surprises me. Well, whatever. I still stand by my points, and I kind of forgot what I was saying. Um, so because I kind of feel embarrassed right now about that misconception. Well, mm, I was saying that, yeah, the story would become in Guild Wars 2 would become a lot more linear, and for that reason you would have your own voice. If I were to choose this new story right here, I really think that my character would be speaking. This is the first time I'm clicking this button. Let me see if my character says something. No, I got a mail. Yep. And nothing. Okay.
Ritlock,
No, there it is.
just got an invitation to a party of some kind from...
It's a summons, real official. Been ages since the last gathering of the legions, and that one, pretty bold, even by his standards. But I don't have much of a choice. When your imperator says jump...
You ask how high?
Right. If this one's as rough as the last, they could use a hand keeping a lid on things.
Well, I'm in.
Great. Meet you at the Black Citadel. We'll catch our ride there.
Right, so you just heard that, as soon as I got the story element, I wouldn't have a choice to what to say. My character was just saying its pre-recorded messages, basically, to the NPCs. Um, and I'm very glad that actually that happened, because I would have looked like a complete fool if it haven't happened that way. So so again, oh yeah, I do remember where I left off before before I got embarrassed of getting the release date of Fallout 4 wrong. So you have whenever your character doesn't talk but you have to make decisions, you would have to give the player what you would have to force the player to read something, right? And read through all those options. And eventually it kind of got to the point in Guild Wars 2 for me where I would not read my responses. I would just, kind of randomly click, and whatever came in my way, just I didn't really care. And this is why this is the reason why I feel kind of bittersweet about this implementation in Guild Wars 2. On one hand, I really wish that I would have a lot more freedom of choosing what to say. But on the other hand, I kind of got really bored of clicking always the same buttons, and when I hearing my own character, just really helps a lot with that. So I wouldn't be bored of reading walls of text of my responses and yada yada. So there's that, and this kind of actually relates to another element of the game, which are, well, Guild Wars 2 doesn't necessarily implement very well, or as well implements it well enough, but not as extensively as Final Fantasy XIV or ESO. And the thing I'm talking about, of course, is emotes. Now, I do have a lot of, a few, not a lot of, but a few emotes of me, oh, no, I don't want to engage. I don't want to engage in combat right now. So, let me just stand here, safe place. So you would have, kind of like, dancing emotes. And for every race, for each race you chose to play with, you would have your own unique kind of dancing. Just like in any other MMO, you would have cultural dances. And you can wave around to characters, you can point, these are the commands I always shoot at you at the beginning of or the end of the videos, or just basically talk. And I love emotes because they are basically the best elements of RPG when you're playing a game to enhance your RPG elements. Many people use emotes to make videos, just like me right now. Please, I'm talking right now. Could you please keep it down? Sorry, these NPCs are shouting in my ear, which I intentionally muted for you guys, so you can hear me better, because I do realize that the game would have been sometimes really loud. But anyway, so emotes are widely used for the reasons of, just actually role-playing and making videos as such. I'm talking to you guys right now, but I kind of imagine as in my head that I'm talking to you through my character, and I can see that, and I am extremely happy to see that. It does add at least 80 billion% of user experience. And to my experience, and that's an extremely positive and overwhelming feeling. And this mechanism is exploited a lot better and extensively in ESO and in Final Fantasy, because in those games you would have a lot more emotes, first of all, but you would also have kind of photo modes when you can take photos and write a story about that one moment with your friend or with the person you just met with online, and whatever. So you can lean to them, you can hug them, you can, I don't know, you can do anything basically, and with the help of I believe with extensions you can add a few more, or at least buy a few more. Now okay, so I've been talking a lot about these, but I really wish I could I wish I would have been prepared enough to show you guys the emotes in ESO and in Final Fantasy, to show you examples of how these are implemented. But again, I'm sorry, I was just not prepared enough for this. Alright, so again, just another side note of what the problem with not adding voices to your character could be. The pacing of a game when you have to make a decision, or when the story writers really want your characters to say something, and your character just doesn't have that potential, then what happens is you would have to answer questions throughout a prompt. And that prompt would be textual, that you have to read through. And that would get boring extremely quickly for you, and it would definitely 100% sure break the pacing of the game. Not necessarily, I'm not talking about 100% as in all the cases, but 100% would break the pacing whenever you are inside an action or you know, maybe a quick action, quick timed event or whatever. Then you would be forced to slow down the game and read through a lot of material that would definitely snap you out of the action and would just definitely decrease your the experience of your players. And adding voice helps a lot. Now, with the emotes, with this technique of, you know, adding voice to the emotes and, you know, those grunts, that actually, you know, kind of helps a lot to the players at what they, you know, would imagine their characters to feel like, but at the same time, it wouldn't limit them to, well, it actually wouldn't, well, if you don't add any sound to your character, then your character would be just completely dumb and feel dead. For this reason, you do have to add, you know, a few sounds whenever you are taking damage. But when you keep that at a minimum, you will get a game like Guild Wars 2, the core game, I mean. And when you take that as a step further with the emotes and any other, you know, these mechanics, when you can, you know, whenever you are pointing at something or talking or laughing, you would make a sound, then you enrich these experiences of your character feeling alive and what you want to be, but doesn't get rid of the personality. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, the personality of your character. And going back 30 minutes earlier in this video, that's what I wanted to say when I said limit. What did I say back then? I don't really quite remember, but if you add voice, then you would get rid of the potentially get rid of the personality of the character that you have imagined. So that's what I wanted to say. That was my first point out of the 3 that I wanted to talk about. So let's continue on. I think I've talked a lot more about this than I should have, and so let's talk about another thing, which is the appearance of your character. Well, it's kind of straightforward that in a RPG game you would want your character to look like whatever you want to, whatever you want it to look like. Right now I look amazing, I think, in my current equipment, and I am not entirely sure whether this is a outfit. Let me check quickly. This is not an outfit. This is just regular armor that you can collect, I believe. Let me check my equipment. No, not the wardrobe. My equipment, and this is just luminous heavy armor with whatever you know, with whatever perks or boons. You know, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's luminous heavy. Whatever. It's not the point. But my point. What what happened? My point is that in an MMORPG, in an RPG of any kind, you know, it's all about you creating or you living your fantasy, and for this reason, you would have to add a lot of of options of how you want your character to look like, including lore and non-lore elements as well. For example, right now I look like a warrior because I do have heavy armor equipped, and if you look closely enough, then you would actually see some resemblance with this guard, with the Seraph Archer right who's standing right beside me. You would have these very intricate carvings in my armor, just like he has. Of course, not in the same style, but with the same level of detail. And and this is, you know, kind of looks right, looks lore friendly to me, because well, the styles, I mean styles as in this is a human guard living in this part of the map or in this part of Tyria, and I'm a completely different race, but the armor itself feels like it belongs in the same universe. But at the same time, I can change into something that feels completely off. Let me try that. I can try maybe the Noble Court. It doesn't, well, I have to activate my accounts. Sorry, my outfits. Okay, so I have some very greenish suit, which I'm pretty sure is due to my color settings of these outfits. I should change that. Okay, so let me see. This is my outfit on green, and this is my outfit on a brownish green. Let's go with you know, with more brownish red. And again, this is another great look, in my opinion. I could imagine my character, you know, going up to some extremely official party or ball that she would, you know, attend, and, you know, have her place in it. And rather than wearing the heavy armors, you know, I could just pretend that this is what she officially suited up for that event. And this is what I talk about. This is what I want to talk about, what I'm saying when I refer to what the heck when I say that you have, besides your decision to make whatever, besides your decision to give or take away the voice of your character, you would also have to create a lot and a lot of assets, of equipments, of armor for your characters. For each race, of course. These are mounts or miniatures. That's not what I wanted to click on. I wanted to click on outfits. Now back again. This is my pirate outfit. Definitely something that belongs in the game. Even in this area, I believe. Well, there are not many pirates here, are they? Are there? Nope. I would have a lot more. I would have a lot more pirates around. Well, there are bandits in Queensdale, but I would have a lot more pirates here in Lornar's Pass, definitely, because that's where pirates are, and of course in Lion's Arch, but that's another story. And then we would have outfits that are completely ridiculous. For example, let me show some completely ridiculous outfit. Huh, funny, I can't really find one, can I? I'm pretty sure I can find something that doesn't really feel right, which is no, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Yeah, this one. This one feels like an extreme, something that came out of Mass Effect 3. You would have your hollow everything around your suit, and they would glow in whatever, you know, color you want them to glow in. If I want them to glow in red, then that's what I'm gonna go with. Which one should I change so it becomes red? Yeah, this one. Yeah, so you just change the color. If I want to make something more apparent, then I would change it to blue, and there we go. And I can customize this outfit any way I like. This is something, of course, completely off to something, well, completely off to as opposed to this warrior's outfit. And there are, you know, this is kind of the another dimension of you having to decide what kind of role-playing elements you go with. On one hand, your character could completely lose its personality if you give it a voice or you know, a predefined set of voices or voice lines, and you have, you know, intentionally put them in the game. Um, on the other, on another dimension, you would have to consider what your character looks like, and there are, you know, this is kind of like a cliche, already known funny element that whenever, you know, you would have the main character of an Japanese anime or or in any movie, the main character would just stand out so ridiculously that it just becomes kind of a joke, um, because your level of customization of the character is just so extensive that it kind of lost all its credibility of being in that complete universe. Again, like I do know that this the mount I'm sitting on is completely matches the outfit I just showed you a few minutes earlier, which is the Inquest style of being everything holographic and you know, techy and kind of this weird mixture of magic and technology, which I think is beautiful. Don't get me wrong on that, but doesn't necessarily feels like it belongs in this game. It feels like it's a few thousand years ahead, and it just weird. It is just weird. It looks weird to me. But for my intentions of wow, that dude is just a Quaggan, isn't he? Okay, whatever. For my intentions of playing with this character, I do imagine that she is, you know, sitting in some extremely exotic, heavily modified, rescued creature that she, you know, she wants to, you know, ride along and say random stuff on YouTube to his watchers, or his or her watchers. You flee so well. I actually do. Okay, so that's actually really dangerous. Let's not go there. So anyways, let me see if I have any other thing that I wanted to talk about. No, I think this is it. So again, to reiterate, I really talked a lot about this decision of giving a voice to your character, and what this decision, you know, implies, and how it's gonna affect your game. The first one being your personality being lost on purpose, or maybe as you would, you know, see the progression of a game such as Guild Wars 2, you would, you know, kind of change this and give the freedom of fantasy to your players at the beginning for a few years, and then, you know, take it away a few years later with an expansion, and proving our, you know, kind of hiding this change behind the fact that your game is developing as a technologically and you know, mechanic wise and UI wise and whatever, so it feels fresh and nice. The second reason, well, not reason, but kind of design point I mentioned is kind of your decision of how you want to pace the game. If you definitely decide that you would have quick paced events that your character does need input, then the only thing that you can do is you know, spit some extremely, you know, wall of text to your character, and that would ultimately, you know, kill the pacing of that exact moment. So if your game is full of those, then do not stick around with do not stick to the, well, just give a voice to your character, and it would definitely keep up the user experience, even though you might get rid of some RPG role-playing elements. And thirdly, I kind of made these parallels between different games like Skyrim, Fallout 4, ESO, and Final Fantasy, and how these games kind of implemented this in-between state of your character being completely mute, but you would have the potential to basically be whatever you want him to be using these voiced emotes. So it's very important that these emotes are voiced, because uh, laughing or initiating a laughing animation for your character without a sound could look extremely creepy or extremely dumb. And I believe it's either of those things, but definitely nothing else. um, yes. And I think I missed out a lot of what I wanted to say. Um, and of course, I want to emphasize again that I'm not a professional game developer. I did develop a few games, and I do like to think about it, but you know, I'm making this series so in hope that you would get your gears going in your head and, you know, kind of provocatively spitting these topics at you. So if you are interested in these, you know, maybe take these ideas further and, you know, suggest something at your company, or make something yourself that is, you know, using these techniques, or possibly something else as well that would be great for the audience to see. Yes, and thirdly, which was a completely off topic and I think was kind of forced of RPG element, is is the appearance of your character. Um, and I'm not talking about the customization of your character as in race and facial expressions and length of arm and the color of the eyes and the color of the hair. I'm talking about the equipment that you can apply to your character and the appearances of those, or the looks, the altogether looks of those assets inside the game. These all have a huge effect on the game. These are definitely elements that either break or make the game. So these are definitely something that you want to put 100% focus on when you are deciding or making decisions when you are developing your game. So I think that's about it for this episode. I do have another topic for the next episode, which I've already talked about, not talked about, but already thought of. So it wouldn't be very forced to talk about later on, which is the music inside games or in games. And hopefully I would be able to show you guys a lot more games other than Guild Wars 2. So thank you very much for watching. If you did watch, I hope you have a, you know, stay safe in these trying times.
Can I ask you a question?
And I really hope that you kind of learned something new or whatever. If you liked this video, please comment, or please press, you know, the like. I'm going to post these on my YouTube channel. And if you didn't like, or you have some you know suggestions, then please do leave a comment so I can improve on these small, you know, blabberings of whatever I'm doing. So again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.